Good morning to everybody, and especially those members of the public watching this on the Council's YouTube channel. Unfortunately, we have some technical issues this morning, so I'm going to call a 10-minute adjournment of this hearing so we can try and sort those technical issues out. So we'll be back at exactly 22. Good morning, everyone, and thank you for everybody for your patience on this slight delay to this meeting this morning, and that was due to some technical issues by one of our staff. Before I formally start the meeting, I will go to each subcommittee member to confirm that they can hear and be heard. This is a legal requirement for me to do so under the Local Authorities and Police and Crime Panels Coronavirus Flexibility of Local Authority and Police and Crime Panel Meetings, England and Wales Regulations 2020. So if you could verbally confirm that you are able to hear me, and I will confirm in response that I can hear you. Where practicable, please also have your video switched on so that you can be seen by other members in attendance and the public watching. First of all, Councillor Paul Andrews.
I can hear you, Chair.
And I can hear and see you, Councillor Andrews, thank you. And Councillor Terry James. You're muted, Councillor James.
Sorry. Likewise, I can hear and see you.
And are you, Councillor James, thank you. I'd also like to request that officers who will be presenting throughout the meeting can also confirm that they can hear and be heard. First of all, Emma Bowell from the Licensing Authority.
I can hear you, Chair.
And I can hear and see you, Emma, thank you. Caroline Marshall, Clerk to the Committee.
I can hear and see you, Chair.
And are you, Caroline, thank you. Alice McAlpine, the Legal Advisor to the Committee.
I can see and hear you, Chair.
And I can see and hear you, Alice, thank you. And finally, Jen Priest, our Technical Support Officer this morning.
Yeah, I can hear and see you, Chair, thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. I would like to welcome everyone to this meeting this morning. The Council is video and audio streaming this meeting live on the internet and making an official recording. This recording forms part of the public record of the meeting and will be available on the Council's website. Please note that while it is only a legal requirement that you have your audio switched on, it is the Council's preference that, where you're able to do so, that you also have your video switched on. Please remember that what you say and do in this meeting has a global reach, and your words and actions should be chosen carefully. May I also remind members to ensure that they are wearing their headsets while listening and speaking during the meeting. This will ensure that the audio quality is the highest possible quality and background noise is significantly reduced. As these are extraordinary circumstances, there are some additional points for members and officers to be aware of. As part of the meeting etiquette and in line with our normal committee practices, all microphones apart from mine will be placed on mute at the start and during the meeting. I will then run through the agenda in the customary way. When you wish to speak, please use the hand button against your name in the participants lists, which should be on the right-hand side of your screens. I will then invite you to speak in order of the hands being raised. Please remember to unmute yourself to speak and mute yourself again when you have finished. Please do not raise your physical hand, as I do not wish to miss anyone who may wish to speak. Please note that the chat facility has been switched off to ensure that members' contributions can be offered through the spoken voice and for the public record. Please ensure all mobile devices are switched off to prevent interference with the audio and video systems. If any attendee loses connection, the meeting will be paused to ascertain if the connection can be restored quickly. If it is not possible to recover the connection within a reasonable amount of time, the meeting will continue as long as a quorum of committee members remains able to hear the proceedings and be heard. If you plan to leave before the end of the meeting, can you please indicate this in advance? Where committee members are required to vote on an item, I will ask each committee member in turn to indicate verbally if they are for, against, or abstaining. The result of the roll call will only be recorded in the minutes of the meeting where there is a requirement to record a named vote. If a committee member has not been present for the whole of the discussion during an item due to a technical fault, they should not vote on that item. Are there any questions on this procedure before we continue? No? Excellent, thank you. So I will now formally open the meeting. Item 1 on the agenda, are there any apologies for absence?
There are no apologies for absence.
Thank you. Item 2, therefore, there are no named substitutes. Item 3, are there any declarations of interests? Are there any Schedule 1, Schedule 2 or other interests to be declared for items on the agenda today? Could you please do this by raising your virtual hand, and I will then ask you to speak to notify the meeting which item you have an interest in and the nature of that interest. Are there any declarations? No. Good. Excellent. So we come to the meat of the meeting at item 7. This is a review of premises license in respect of Oval Wines and Spirits, 14 The Oval, Hereford, HR27HG, which has been called by West Mercia Police under the Licensing Act 2003. This is to consider an application for a review of the premises license in respect of the premises already mentioned, called by West Mercia Police as a responsible authority. Now, the orders of speakers will be Emma Bowell in respect of the licensing authority, PC Chris Lee from the West Mercia Police, Richard Alsop from our Trading Standards Department, Makithra Suranraja, excuse me if I've got that wrong, who is the premises license holder, who is also represented today by Mr. Nick Semper and Mr. Paul Needs. There will then be questions from members of the subcommittee, who may ask the responsible authority if they have anything else to add, and then ask the applicant agent if they have anything to add. There will then be an adjournment. So, well, I'll come on to the adjournment when we get there, I think. Just a moment. So, let's turn to Emma, who is presenting the case on behalf of the licensing authority.
Thank you, Chair. As the Chair previously disclosed, this is to consider an application for a review of a premises licence in respect to the Oval Wines and Spirits in Hereford. The recommendation is that the subcommittee determine the application with a view to promote the licensing objectives in the overall interests of the local community. They should give appropriate weight to the steps that are appropriate to promote the licensing objectives, the licensing authority's application for the review, the guidance issued under Licensing Act 2003, representations that include any supporting information presented by all parties, and also the Council's licensing policy of 2015 to 2020. There are a number of options open to the committee in relation to the review. The modification of the conditions of the premises licence. There's also the exclusion of any licensable activities from the scope of the licence, the removal of the designated premises supervisor from the licence, the suspension of the licence for a period that doesn't exceed 3 months, and the revocation of the licence. Where the authority takes the step mentioned in the first 2 points, it may provide that the modification or exclusion is to have effect for only such a period that does not exceed 3 months. The reasons for these recommendations is it ensures compliance with the Licensing Act 2003. The licensing authority must take into account any relevant representations that have been made. Relevant representations are those that relate to one or more of those licensing objectives, have not been withdrawn, and are made by the premise license holder, a responsible authority, or an interested party. The details of the application are: the review was called by West Mercia Police as a responsible authority. We received the application on the 13th of July 2020. Consultation period began on the 14th of July 2020, with the consultation ending 28 days later on the 10th of August. The application for review is attached to Appendix 1, and copies of the application were sent to the premise license holder via email and personal delivery at the premises and to the responsible authorities. In brief, the licensing authority's grounds for review the West Mercia Police's grounds for review are: on Tuesday, the 19th of May at 13:20 hours, a male entered a premises known as Oval Wines and Spirits. He purchased 4 cans of lager using a bank card. The bank card was later reported to have been stolen, and subsequent inquiries undertaken by West Mercia Police established that the alcohol was purchased by a 17-year-old using a stolen bank card. CCTV footage was provided by the premises, and this established the crime and further evidence that when the purchase was made, the staff member processing the sale of alcohol did not request to see any proof of identification, nor was any produced by the male purchasing the cans. This transaction was captured on the CCTV and was obtained by the police for evidential purposes. The premises was first licensed in June 2016 as a general convenience store selling alcohol. Since the license was first issued, there has been 3 transfer and varied designated premises supervisor applications. These were in October 16, December 2019, and February 2020. The current license, which can be found at Appendix 2, authorises the following activities: sale and supply of alcohol, consumption off the premises, Monday to Sunday, 7 AM until 11 PM. The licence is also subject to a number of conditions which the applicant had agreed to during the 28 consultation period of the granting of the premises licence in 2016. So the circumstances leading to the review are subsequent inquiries undertaken by the police showed CCTV footage of a 17-year-old male purchasing the alcohol. There is a condition on the licence, as mandatory, that produces an age verification policy that must be at the holder at the premises. Also, there is a condition under the Prevention of Children from Harm that states that Challenge 25 policy will be kept at the premises and signage shall be displayed at all entrances to that premises, as well as at least one location behind customer service counter, advertising the scheme that they operate. Due to the evidence gathered that the underage sale took place and there being no attempt to challenge the male for identification for proof of age, West Mercia Police launched this review. A representation has been made from Trading Standard which supports the review due to intelligence they have received, and their representation can be found at Appendix 3. No other representations were received. Any decision is unlikely to have any significant effect on the local community. The report has human rights implications for both the premise licence holder and the residents from the local neighbourhood. Any of the steps outlined in Section 1 of this report may have financial implications for a licensee's business and livelihood, and or may have impacts on the day-to-day lives of the residents living in close proximity. Article 8I of the European Convention of Human Rights provides that everyone has the right to respect for his or her private and family life in his or her home, which includes business premises. There are unlikely to be any financial implications for the authority at this time. The licensing authority must have regard to the promotion of the 4 licensing objectives, which are the prevention of crime and disorder, public safety, the prevention of public nuisance, and the protection of children from harm in exercising its functions under the Licensing Act 2003. Further regard should be made to the statutory guidance under Section 182 of the Act and the Council's own statement of licensing policy. The options available to the licensing authority on considering this application under the Licensing Act 2003 are set out in Section 1 of this report. There is also a number of stated cases that your legal advisor can advise you further on. Schedule 5 gives the right of appeal, and also appeals should be made to the magistrate's court and must be made within 21 days, beginning with the day on which the appellant was notified by the licensing authority of the decision appealed against. There is little risk associated with the decision at the time, as the legislation allows for that right of appeal. All responsible authorities and members of the public living in Herefordshire have been consulted. Appendices 1 to 3 can be found at the back of the report, and I understand the agent for the applicant has provided a supplement. Many thanks, Chair.
Thank you very much. We now turn to West Mercia Police contribution. Unless my eyes are deceiving me, those are sergeant stripes on your shoulder.
They are indeed. Yes, they are. I do apologise. I've also got a bit of a croaky voice. I do apologise.
Oh, don't worry about that. We've got you here as Police Constable Chris Lee, but I think you're actually Police Sergeant Chris Lee. So, Sergeant Lee, your turn.
It's the first time I've actually been called that in official capacity. Good morning to you. Yeah, I think Emma Bowler's obviously given the summary of the incident where there was a crime committed using a fraudulent card at the store. It was captured on CCTV. which I viewed myself following the officer in case's initial investigations. And it provided the detail that there was no attempt made to ask for identification. The youth in question was of an age approaching 18, but not 18. So that needed to be asked. We needed to establish that fact, and that person is still a child, which obviously causes us great concern when we refer to the protection of children from harm and that Challenge 25 policy. It's clearly stated on their license conditions. So I've attended the store with Emma Bowell to issue the notice of the launch of the review. We observed one Challenge 25 poster at the store. The license clearly states it needed more. So following the review being launched, we were contacted by the agent regarding the matter, and I made it quite clear for me, the objective for me was to, I asked for 3-month revocation to allow for adequate training to take place. So I went back to the premises on the, I did have the date, 29th of July, I think it was, and reviewed if there had been any improvements made at the site. And I have to say it was a significant difference. There was adequate signage put in place. I reviewed the training logs because I have a training concern in all of this, and also the refusals log, and there was evidence of refusals taking place on their register. And I was satisfied that there were adequate training taking place since the review had been launched. And it was right to go and do that because every day matters and every child matters. So the sooner that training took place and their standards were raised, the better for the community. I also was impressed, I have to say, by that they got a till facility whereby every time an alcohol sale goes through the till, it comes up with a Challenge 25 that they have to acknowledge before they can put the sale through. I can't recall whether that was there or not prior, but it's certainly there now. So I did make a representation to the council, not knowing, if I'm honest, if the procedure, whether it could be withdrawn, because I was satisfied that the objective had been reached from my perspective. However, we are here at the review, and I did have a concern about the sale of alcohol. There is only one record of sale of alcohol underage, and it is this with this particular licensee. So I feel we've addressed the matter regarding what measures they've taken and put in place since the review was launched.
Okay, thank you, Sergeant Lee. That's quite helpful for us. So let me come on now to our trading standards. Mr. Alsop, you're muted. You're still muted.
My apologies to all. I work for trading standards, and our responsibility, along with the police, is to enforce the law at underage sales. And our input into licensing is the protection of children from harm. I became aware of this review, and based on the evidence that you've just heard from Chris Lee, we supported the review. My own personal experience of this premises is we had received 2 complaints. They are allegations, admittedly, they weren't proven. In October last year, which probably predates the current licensee, and on the 2nd of December last year, which prompted an advisory, a fairly friendly advisory visit from myself on the 4th of December, where I imparted some advice. So needless to say, we were disappointed in trading standards to hear that there was a confirmed sale on the 19th of May. And I think the licensee may consider themselves lucky that further action wasn't taken at the time, because of course the options were there to issue a fixed penalty charge notice, or indeed to prosecute the business under the Licensing Act. However, the review was launched on the basis that they needed 3 months to sort out their training procedures. I understand now that since the review was launched, and we've just heard from Chris Lee that he's been back to the premises, and on that basis, as far as the training is concerned, he's satisfied that they've taken measures to ensure, hopefully, that the licensing objectives are met. From a trading standards perspective, I will say that this premises is certainly on our radar, and we certainly don't expect to see any further breaches of the Licensing Act. But I'm just saying we do recognise from what Chris Lee has said that improvements have been made. So I will say no more. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Alsop. Are there any questions from members of the committee at this stage? No.
No.
Thank you, Councillor James, Councillor Andrews. That's great. Thank you very much. So if we can turn now to the premises licence holder, you're being represented by Mr. Semper and Mr. Needs. Who would like to speak first?
Me, if that's okay.
Okay, Mr. Semper.
Okay, members of the committee, this is a comparatively straightforward matter to understand. The police case is that the store sold to a person under the age of 18 who had presented a stolen bank card, and in doing so have failed in their obligations regarding age verification found in the mandatory conditions and also in a specific condition relating to the premises licence around Challenge 25. Now let me explain why they're wrong. Okay, firstly, the mandatory condition states the operator must, before a sale, verify the age of persons who appear to be under the age of 18 or such older age as may be specified in the policy. We maintain that the offender does not look under the age of 18 in this case, and we believe he is now 18. Furthermore, the operator had good reason to believe that he was of that age, and therefore we are not in breach of the mandatory condition. Secondly, the Challenge 25 condition says that they shall operate the Challenge 25 scheme. They do, and they have evidence of that, and you have evidence of that in the supplementary pack provided for you, both evidence of its operation before the date complained and afterwards. Therefore, they are not in breach of the condition. The fact is that the offender in this case defeated the Challenge 25 scheme by identity fraud. Now, our explanation is simply this. The offender is a fraudster who has indeed been cautioned for fraud. Previously, he has come into the shop on numerous occasions and has produced the ID of an elder sibling whom he closely resembles. This ID, a passport, shows his date of birth to be 2001. Staff have checked this ID on these previous occasions, so much so that they felt they no longer needed to check him again, as they believed that they, inverted commas, knew who he was and that he was of age. Therefore, the operator has been defrauded into believing the perpetrator was someone else, and this actually makes them a victim of fraud by impersonation. Okay, now on this particular occasion, the fraudster has gone further by presenting a stolen bank card as his own, thus obtaining property by false representation, for which the premises have had to bear the consequences. So this is a licensing hearing, not a court of law. So what Licensing Act offences has my client committed? You might rightly ask yourselves as the panel. Well, firstly, there are two offences in the Licensing Act. The first is section 147, and this makes an offence to knowingly allow the sale of alcohol to a child. Yet my client did not know the offender was under 18, and furthermore had good reason to believe that he was an adult. So we submit that no offence has actually been committed there. Okay. And secondly, section 147A of the Licensing Act makes an offence to persistently sell alcohol to children. But there is no persistence here, simply evidence of an isolated incident. We submit that no offence has been committed here too. Now, I need you to look at the statutory guidance, section 182 statutory guidance that's been referred to by Ms. Bowell during her opening statement. According to para 11.29, you might want to make a note of that. 11.29 of the statutory guidance. Had my client sold twice to a child in very quick succession, and it is apparent that they are not operating a responsible policy or exercising appropriate due diligence, then the responsible authorities should consider taking steps towards launching a review. As my client has not sold twice in very quick succession and does operate a responsible policy and exercise due diligence, then I submit that this review has been brought entirely wrongly under para 11.29. Now, under section 169A of the Licensing Act, it states that even where persistent selling is established, then a police inspector can arrange the voluntary closure of a premises, voluntary suspension of the license of a premises for up to a maximum of 14 days. I've done it myself in an earlier life. Yet in this instance, the responsible authorities have asked for a 3-month closure, a punishment 6 times longer than the statutory remedy provided by the Act for persistent selling. Now, even if persistent selling had been established, which it hasn't, then in our submission, the sanction sought is an entirely disproportionate penalty. The stated reason that responsible authorities require the premises to be closed for 3 months is to allow the staff to be retrained. It may interest you to know that Mr. Needs visited the shop on the day that we were instructed and retrained all the staff by close of business that very same day. These training records have subsequently been examined by Sergeant Lee, and I believe they've been found to be completely in order. So why do we need to suspend the licence on this wines and spirits shop for 3 months? What can possibly be achieved other than to irrevocably damage this business completely? Now, there is mention of previous allegations of underage sales at the shop. This is intelligence and not evidence. As you're aware from the Thwaites case, which will be included in your bundle, you need to be actuated by reliable evidence of real problems. And like I stress, intelligence is not evidence. Furthermore, as Mr. Alsop correctly identified, these allegations, these alleged sales occurred in 2019. The current owner did not take over this shop until February 2020, and therefore this intelligence does not relate to her. This intelligence is therefore irrelevant in law. So in conclusion, we submit that the premises have committed no offences, have not breached the premises licence. This review has been incorrectly brought by the responsible authorities, and in doing so, they have sought a disproportionate sanction. We have indeed engaged with the relevant responsibilities to ask whether we could agree to dispense with today's review under Regulation 9 of the Licensing Act 2003 Hearings Regulations of 2005, but the answer was no. Consequently, we believe that my client has been put through this process unnecessarily and has borne the cost of having to engage us to represent them, which is highly regrettable in our opinion. Now, Mr. Needs can talk through the training, policies and procedures which were in place both before and after the incident if you wish. But the summary of our case is simply this. 1. The operator is a victim of a deception. 2. She has done nothing wrong in law. 3. She has not breached her licence conditions. And consequently 4. We respectfully invite you to dismiss this review. If I can assist you any further, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Samper. Mr. Needs, have you anything to add to what Mr. Samper has said? I think we are aware of the training records, but if you could briefly go through the timetables so that you undertook the training, please, it would be helpful.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Chair. I attended Oval Wines and Spirits on the 13th of July, where I met with the staff. We all sat down, we trained together. When I attended site, I checked the training records to see what training they'd been given before. It would have been paper-based training previously in responsible alcohol retailing. We went through age verification, enhanced age verification, recognizing false documents, what to check on the documents. We went through how to deal with conflicts, spotting signs of vulnerability, should you have vulnerable people coming into the shop, both mental and physical. We covered the Ask Angela scheme. So they've had a complete retraining with regards to responsible alcohol retailing. The training that they were given far exceeds that of many courses that are available online. We reviewed the record keeping, renewed all of the logbooks, which were completely updated. As was stated, there is electronic point of sale reminders, record keeping as well available. We added more Challenge 25 posters to the site. And I met Sergeant Chris Lee the lunchtime, the 29th of July, at the premises where we went through all of the training records, the record keeping, the policies, and everything that's in place. And I believe that Sergeant Lee stated at the time that he was happy with everything that we provided. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much, Mr. Needs. Are there any questions from members of the committee so far?
No, I think that's been fairly adequately explained so far.
Councillor Andrews?
Same here, Chair. Same here.
Okay, thank you very much for that, everybody. There will now be an adjournment while the committee makes its deliberations. Caroline, would you like to explain the difference between this and other meetings, please, for the adjournment?
So what's going to happen now is I'm going to move Police Sergeant Lee, Emma Bowell, Paul Needs, Nick Semper and Richard Alsop into a waiting room. That means that the committee themselves can discuss the matter that's been brought before them and reach a decision. When we are nearing the decision, we will let you back into the meeting and then the chair will announce the decision to the whole meeting. We will check that you can still hear and see us so that you can actually hear the decision that's being made. I hope that's acceptable. Unfortunately, we have a connectivity issue.
And welcome back to everybody viewing this on the Council's YouTube channel. Before I read out the decision of the subcommittee, could the subcommittee members please verbally confirm that you are able to hear me, and I will confirm in response that I can hear you. Where practicable, please also have your video switched on so that you can be seen by other members in attendance and the public watching. Councillor Paul Andrews.
I can hear and see you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Andrews. And Councillor Terry James.
I can hear and see you, Chairman.
And you. Thank you, Councillor James. And now could officers and attendees also confirm that they can hear and be heard? Emma Bowell from the Licensing Authority.
I can hear and see you, Chair.
Caroline Marshall, the clerk to the committee.
I can hear and see you, Chair.
Alice McAlpine, the legal advisor to the committee. Oh, I can hear you as well, by the way. Sorry, Alice.
I can see and hear you, Chair.
And I can see and hear you as well. And we have Police Sergeant Chris Lee from West Mercia Police. You're muted, Sergeant Lee.
I can hear you, Chair.
And you. Thank you, Sergeant Lee. Richard Alsop from the Trading Standards Department of Herefordshire Council.
Yes, I can see and hear you too, Chair.
Thank you very much. And can I confirm that the premises license holder and her representatives can hear and see? Mr. Semper?
I can see and hear you, sir.
Mr. Needs and Miss Setharan Naraja?
I can see and hear you, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. I have been practicing her name. Okay, the decision of the committee is this. The committee has heard from the Licensing Authority, West Mercia Police, our Trading Standards Department, and the designated premises holder and her representatives. We note that the Challenge 25 policy condition should be enforced, but we also note that the premises is on the radar of our Trading Standards Committee. Familiarity is not an excuse for not challenging 25. However, we note also that the designated premises supervisor took very quick action after this was brought to her attention. The committee note that all the actions that have been taken since May and all the training undertaken by the representatives here today. So in this case, the committee feels that no further action needs to be taken to uphold the licensing objectives. That is the decision of the committee. Before I finally close the meeting, can I check with Democratic Services team that the live stream is now switched off